one, action.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome once again on this snowy day in Newark, New Jersey to our NIA Fireside Chat. With me tonight is our special guest. Brother Baker is not here. He's off for the holidays, and we're joined by our own Sheikh for NIA Masjid, our Imam Sheikh Dawood, for those who don't know, and those who haven't seen him for a while. Glad for you to join us tonight, Sheikh. Really happy to have a conversation. Tonight, we don't have a specific topic. We're going to try to get as much question answered. So any question that's been bothering you or bothering somebody that you know, any question that you want to have answered, like submit it in the chat. We have a couple. We're going to fire away the Sheikh, and inshallah, we'll get a lot of stuff answered tonight that you've probably been hearing people asking or you yourself had doubts on. But before I lay into the question, Sheikh, first and foremost, tell the audience, how you doing, how your family is doing, and how you guys are keeping during this COVID situation.
Alhamdulillah, all is well with us. We're staying in the lockdown, staying indoors, and everyone is healthy. We're just staying indoors and not getting too involved in stuff outside of the house.
You're bored?
it is a little challenging not going out, but alhamdulillah, not going out.
All right, inshallah. So let's start. I got a couple of questions. I'm going to warm up. We've got some interesting ones. I'm going to slowly warm you up a little bit, get the blood going. First question is somebody asked, I finished praying salah, and then I remembered that I didn't have wudu. What do I do?
If you remember that you definitely didn't have wudu, then you have to make wudu and make the salah all over again. It means that the salah is not valid because the Prophet says that salah is not valid without tahara. So if you know for sure that you didn't have wudu, then salah. But if you know you had wudu, but then you begin to doubt whether you had it or not, then you go on what you were sure about.
So, if you're more inclined that you had wudu, then you don't have to pray.
Yeah, you have to.
But if you're absolutely sure that you broke your wudu, then you go back and make wudu and pray.
Yeah, yes.
And that's the same thing whether it's during salah or after the salah.
During the salah or after the salah. During the salah, you stop your salah right away and go and pray because I'm going to make wudu. Because if you continue, your salah is still not valid because wudu invalidates.
Okay, so we're gonna get this. There's a couple of salah questions got submitted that we want to get out of the way because people got their salah questioning. Second question on salah: if I come to the masjid and the Jama'ah is praying Salatul Isha, but I did not pray Maghrib. But when I came to the masjid, they started Salatul Isha. What do I do?
Okay. Well, you can join the salah with the intention of Maghrib.
You join the Isha Salah
with the intention of Maghrib.
With the intention of praying Maghrib, okay.
When you finish 3 rakats of salah, you will sit and wait until the imam makes taslim, and then you make salam with him. You don't salam out before because you're following the imam. You want the jama'ah, so you're following the imam. So you join with the intention of Maghrib, and when you finish 3, you just sit in place until he makes the taslim and you salam out with him.
Okay, good.
Then you make the isha.
Okay, and that's the same thing for any salah.
It's the same thing for any
If you
salah.
came in for Salatul As and you missed Salatul Dhuhr, you do the same thing.
Yeah, because you're not allowed to change the order of the prayer.
Okay, but the difference is if you come in for Salatul As and you didn't pray Dhuhr, you don't have to get up because it's 4 rakah.
It's 4 rakah, yes.
So you just pray.
So you pray with the intention, yes.
And then when you finish, you go back and pray.
Pray your as.
Pray your as.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so that's important.
Yeah, because it's permissible to have a different intention to the imam.
Okay. And the last question on the salah is, someone asked, if I don't make my salah, does that make me a disbeliever?
The two things about that. One, if a person that making salah is a very obligatory act in Islam, and is a sign of a person's Islam, yes, based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-ahdu baynana wa baynahum as-salah, the union between them is salah, faman tarakaha faqad kafar. Whoever gives it up has committed an act of kufr. Now, there's a difference between an act of kufr and kufr itself. Right? An act of disbelief and disbelief itself. An act of disbelief is any deliberate disobedience is an act of disbelief. So a person drink alcohol deliberately, he committed an act of disbelief because this is disobedience to Allah. But that does not necessarily make him a non-Muslim. So if that person leave the salah because of laziness or carelessness or whatever the case might be, but they know that they're making, and many Muslims really say, Allah knows my heart, I don't fall that part, but Allah knows my heart.
Yeah.
So they acknowledge the salah, just that they acknowledge their own negligence. That person is considered asi, is considered a disobedient Muslim. He's not a non-Muslim. But if he, in his heart, believes that salah is nonsense, it's a waste of time, does not don't believe, then that person becomes a non-Muslim.
You're actually disbelieving in the salah itself.
Yes, he
Yeah.
repudiating the salah verbally.
Yeah.
Then he's given up. Then that person is considered a non-Muslim. But as long as that person acknowledges the obligatory nature of the salah and recognizes his own negligence, then that person is just sinful. That's all. It's committing sin.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that wraps up our salah question. Here's an interesting one now. Someone asked is, how do we know that the Quran is from Allah?
The Quran, first of all, the Quran itself is a unique book, and it is considered the greatest miracle of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. The Quran itself, first of all, claimed that it is from Allah. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah, says that he received it from Allah. So you have to now look at the book itself and its contents and see. Because we believe the Prophet is the Prophet of Allah and he speaks the truth. And Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah, is being one of the prophets of Almighty God. So he says he received it from Allah, so we believe the Prophet. That's one. Two, the book itself says this is from Allah. So Tanzil, that it was sent down by Allah. So with that as the second point, the book itself is testifying to this. Thirdly, when you examine the book itself, its contents of the book itself is beyond the scope of any human being at the time or even after.
So give me an example of that. What makes it beyond the scope?
The scope. When it comes to a lot of first of all, the general information. There's a lot of information from previous times of what happened before. The Prophet was known to be an illiterate person. He could not read, he could not write, he did not have any tutors, he was not taught by anyone, and therefore to report on accurate information that many of the Jews and the Christians would come and ask him questions, and he answers accurately. Where did he get the information from? If Allah wasn't giving it to him, where would he get it? Because nobody was there teaching him. All right. So that is one point. One way that information that he didn't know where he got the information from. Second thing is that the Quran mentions a lot of points that or things that it's not a book of science or technology, but there are many scientific principles or facts mentioned in the Quran that only within the 21st century and with modern technology that one's able to understand, in the context. I mean, first of all, the shape of the earth. At the time of the Prophet, the 6th century, the Prophet is in the 6th century, told him it's true that the earth is flat.
Yeah.
If you go to the end, you'll fall off. That is the current belief. But the Prophet is, the Quran is saying, well, and the earth after we created, we made it egg shaped. So it means not quite round, It is slightly
elliptical.
flat.
Yeah.
So the earth is saying, and this was the Islamic understanding and is taught by the Muslims in Spain, in the universities in Spain. This is where Columbus and all those fellas learned that the earth is round, and from there they set off on that because this was the Muslim introduction. And there's so many other principles,
Like the principle of birth.
the
and
earth
birth.
and so on.
Yeah.
You know, Allah mentioned, for instance, Allah mentioned in one ayah, He says, the individual who refused to accept the truth, his chest becomes constricted. Who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not anything. His chest becomes constricted as though he ascended in the sky. Ascended into the sky. You know, that as though he was ascended into the sky. That most people didn't understand what the context of it speaking. But now, in the 20, we know that the earth has, you know, it has an atmosphere, it has a stratosphere, and the higher you go, the less oxygen there is in the air. So the higher you go, you have to put on a mask to be able to breathe, but not oxygen tank to breathe. Otherwise, you can actually suffocate in open air because there's no oxygen to breathe. Now that understanding of suffocating, of being constricted, you know, we feel constricted from not being able to. That concept was not known to the time of the Prophet because nobody knew that the
atmosphere,
atmosphere and all that.
Yeah.
Nobody knew anything about that, or about the depth of the ocean. No one knew that the light from the sun only penetrates to a certain depth of the ocean. No one knows that. But the Quran talks about that. He's talking about how to disbelieve that how dark it becomes. You know, there's darkness upon darkness. You know, above which is a cloud. You know, it says it is so dark. You know that if he put his hands in front of his face, he's not going to be able to see it. No one knew that until we were able to develop equipment, you know, diving bells and
To go all the way down.
to go so deep to know that there is total darkness down there. You can't even see your own hand.
So the point is, there's a lot of scientific
There's a lot
facts
of
in the
principles
Quran.
that is mentioned, not just mentioned like that in the Quran. I mean, I was making a particular point and use these as to make a point that no one knew at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No one knew it. What information that he could come from some place. No one knew it. Those things.
So on that point, given that, there's a lot of information that couldn't be known at the time or understood that's in the Quran at the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's given is true. The second question people follow up is, so some of the stuff there is true, but how do we know that the Quran had stayed pure from over 1400 years ago to now, and there's no change? It hasn't been abrogated. People haven't added anything, subtracted anything. How do we know it's exactly in the form as it was then as it is now?
Okay, so the authenticity of the Quran. First of all, the Quran itself is a miraculous book, as you mentioned before. So when the Quran was being revealed, the Prophet ﷺ himself, and he taught the companions to memorize the book. It is the only book that we know in history that is memorized continuously from cover to cover. So every ayah, every verse is memorized. So when the Prophet ﷺ, by the end of the Prophet's life, the Quran was not only written down, but it was completely memorized. It was written down also in the hearts of thousands of people. And that tradition went on from generation to generation. So the companions of the Prophet taught the next generation. That the Tabi'in taught the next generation, and that continue on to this generation, to this day, that it is still part of the tradition to memorize Quran.
Yep.
So that the Quran, even if all the printed copies of the Quran disappeared, you know, it is possible for a person to actually write it from memory again. And this happened. We have, you know, from the transatlantic slave trade, we had many of those people who came as what was bought from Africa, who wrote Quran by hand.
After they came, because
After
they
they
had
came
copies.
here, they had nothing and they wrote Quran by hand.
Yep.
Because it is in the memory and the hearts
Yep.
of people. So I mean, and this is yes. So this is the first one. So the Quran is kept in the hearts of people. It's not just only written so you can lose it. That's the first point. Second point is that the Quran itself is the only book that is continuously recited. It is a form of worship itself. So it's recited continuously. So you have people trained even in the finer details of recitation. So it's not only memorizing, but even how to recite it,
Yep.
how to explain it. All these little details you find that kept, that it goes from generation to generation. The other thing is that the Quran has been reported to us from every generation by so many people reciting, reporting it. There's what is called in the Islamic principle. They call it Islamic principle. It's called Isnad.
Yes, now
Isnad.
the chain.
Yeah, the chain. At every level of the chain, there's so many people, different people, reporting the same thing, that
Well,
it was not
okay.
possible that they could have collaborated to make up a story.
Okay, so quick one.
Yes.
Is there any independent studies outside of what you say? And I'm sure a lot of non-Muslims,
Yes.
a lot of universities, non-Muslim scholars,
Yes.
has there been any independent study that has said, let me check this thing out,
Yes.
and have confirmed we're kind of going through this thing, it's kind of authentic?
Yeah, there actually, I mean, most non-Muslim scholars, historical scholars, accept the Quran that we have in our hands as the same as
Okay.
reported by the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings of Allah. And actually, 2 years ago, so there was a researcher. He was doing some research on a manuscript that is found in one of the archives of the museums in Britain.
Yeah.
And he came across he did this parchment. It was a parchment with Quranic recitation, with Quranic chapters on it, and he was doing his research, and he looked at it. Was they sit down for they had it for like how long? So many of our historical documents and stuff sit in these museums, just sit there like that.
Yeah.
So he was sort of going through, and he found this, and he started to look at it. He began to study and go through it, and then it occurred to him to do carbon dating on it. And when he did the carbon dating on it, he found that it was from around the same period of the companions. So this parchment, they have this.
So they compared it.
Yeah, they compared it, and they found that it's the same thing that we find in printed today.
Okay.
So and that's a historical thing that is found in the, of course.
I think we shared that.
It became valuable now
Yeah.
to them, that piece of parchment.
Okay. So we're gonna get some real interesting questions. We swing away a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you've been watching TV, you see like these monoliths start to appear all over the place. This straight up steel thing, and people get excited like they're aliens.
Yeah.
And so we got a lot of questions. Does the Quran talk about aliens, and does aliens exist? Because people actually thought they were aliens planting those things. So now they want to look, we got aliens around. It's for real.
I believe the monoliths are like the crop, the designs in the crops, the corn crops and stuff. Those that they have. It's about the same thing.
Yeah.
People do them to create wonder and stuff like that. So the Quran does not talk about any aliens, and the Prophet never talks about aliens, people living on a different thing. The Quran does talk about another species of being that exists, which are jinn.
Which are jinns.
Which are jinn that exists, and they have certain, capabilities and stuff like that.
But the question then is,
But
can jinn takes the form of aliens then, or no? Will people see as aliens?
maybe some people might think of them as aliens. Maybe some of maybe to that extent. But they're not really alien because they've been living on the earth. They share the earth with us. They share the earth and they share our space. earth and sky, they share our space. So you can't really call them alien if they share our space. It's just that we don't see them. We can't because they are spirit beings. We can't actually visualize them unless, of course, they assume a form that we can see them.
But would they assume a form other than a human form or any form that
They
exists?
have their own form.
Or they have their own form?
They have their own form. It's like angels. Angels have their own form.
Yep.
It's just that when they to be viewed or seen by people, they usually assume human form because they're spirits, so they can assume the form of a human being, and they do. Angels are done it, historically angels do that. The angel Gabriel came to the prophet many times as a man.
Yep.
So they can assume the different forms. And Iblis also, the devil, he can assume different forms.
Yep.
So they come to people and encourage them. So
Do we have
they
any-
can assume forms.
Do you have any question in the chat or no? Okay, so quick one. Somebody asked, were there any women prophets in the history? We talk about there were, people, we grew up and we hear like there's 124,000 prophets in the time. There's 25 mentioned in the Quran, but in the long history of mankind, there was hundreds of thousands of prophets. Have there been women prophets?
I have never been. There's the Quran nor the Hadith does not mention that there were any women prophets. There were righteous women that the Quran identified, and the Quran identified them as as a model of righteousness. The mother of Jesus, Mary, the mother of Jesus, Maryam, the mother of Jesus, the wife of Pharaoh,
Yep.
and stuff like that, and Khadija and Fatima. So the Quran does mention these, and the Hadith literature does mention these righteous people, that women that step out above all the other women of the world.
Yep.
But as far as prophets, no.
All right, here's an interesting one. Marijuana is now legalized in New Jersey, recreational marijuana. So, I mean, it's recreational, it's legalized. Does that mean we can use it?
Well, straight up, no. I mean,
That's the question. I mean, I'm just asking the question.
No, we cannot. We don't recreate. It's just like alcohol or so.
Okay.
No intoxicant. We're not allowed to recreate with them. With it. Medicinal stuff. As I said, it has its own. It has its own ruling. Depends on necessity.
You're talking about medicinal.
Medicinal
If you're
stuff,
prescribed,
yeah.
like for pain, people provide Percocet or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
For medicinal purposes, it has its own. As I said, necessity has its own rules
Yeah.
when it comes to medicinal uses. But other than that, no, recreational, no.
But medicinal is not like if you're having a headache or you're not
No,
feeling good, you take
medicinal
it.
is a
Yeah,
medicine
okay.
that you need to
Okay.
time. So, but as I said, in terms of recreation, no.
Someone said that they heard in the story of Moses, how the story of Moses during his time, the Pharaoh existed, and there was this horrible human being that did so much to the people of Moses and the Jews and everything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he separated the ocean and caused him to drown, but the story says that he didn't really drown, that Allah wanted to preserve his body as a living proof to mankind of this person. Is that body preserved today? Like, is it exist, the Pharaoh of the time of Moses, and where is it?
Yeah, it doesn't exist. The Pharaoh of course, Pharaoh, the title of the leaders of Egypt at the time, they were called pharaohs, but the Pharaoh at the time of Moses, who was drowned in the ocean, that his body was retrieved from the ocean, and the Egyptian of that time, Allah gave them a special ability to preserve bodies,
Embalm them.
bodies,
Yeah, the Egyptian
and
mummies.
to this day that we don't know how they were able to do that. That was a special permission from Allah that at that time this was developed, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says of Pharaoh, Al-Yawma nunajjika bi badanika economy man khalfa ayah. And this day we shall save your body that you might be assigned to people coming after you. So the Quran mentions this. That's what Allah mentioned in the Quran. So he was Pharaoh was retrieved from the ocean, and he was his body was embalmed according to the standards that was done, and he was kept. And his body is in Egypt right now. Actually, they did autopsies and stuff like that. They found salt in his lungs.
You mean the salt from the
Ocean? Yes.
the ocean?
Yeah, they found salt in his
Which ocean was that? Was the Nile?
No, it was the Red Sea.
The Red Sea.
Yeah, the Red Sea. They
That's
found
interesting.
salt in his.
So if you're planning to go to Egypt on vacation,
Yeah.
in the museum,
Go to the
the
museum.
Pharaoh of the time of Musa is there.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
there.
that's an interesting thing. If you plan to go to Egypt, yeah. Okay. So, question here. We know that you also, in your time at the masjid, you spend a lot of time counseling. This is a hard question. I gotta ask you some hard questions sometimes. But what is some, you counsel a lot of people on different things. But what is some of like the common counseling questions or challenges you face or people come to you on? I mean, I know they come to you on a lot of things, but what are some of those things?
Yeah, a lot. There are a lot of issues that are there behind this. One of the things that you find with couples that they, when they're courting and they're preparing to get married, they can talk for 24/7.
Talk or text? Which one?
Talk.
Okay.
They talk to each other, whether on the phone or text.
Okay.
They can communicate, right? They can communicate, and they can talk with each other 24/7 and don't run out of words. But after they're married for a short while, for a few years or so, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, all of a sudden one of the things is that they don't talk to each other anymore. So communication is a breakdown in communication. So you find a lot of that happens. Of course, when there's a breakdown in communication and there's not that give and take, so that they are always on the same page, it creates a lot of problems. So from miscommunication, bad communication, all that. So it does create a lot of problems and create distances and stuff like between them. And they have to start assuming stuff because they don't know what's going on with the other person. Stuff creates suspicions, all kind of stuff happens. So the relationships start to get strange, start to get difficult or strained. And if very often they ignore it and they don't really follow up on it until it really come back. And then they start picking at each other. Now they have to, they think. But it's important, I always encourage them, that, okay, this happens, you have to fix it. You got to come on that. So that's one of the issues that I think lack of communication or bad communication that happens, a lot that happens with couples, and so they don't fix. The other thing is that you find a lot that couples they have this thing that they use the past a lot. So
They're bringing up the things from the past.
Things in the past. So you do something. If you fix it, I say, if you got a problem, fix it.
Right.
That's always the advice. Fix it. Don't leave it lingering around. Don't sweep it under the rug because one day you can stump your toe and you fall down and hurt yourself. So don't push it under the rug. Fix it. And once you fix it, that's it. Leave it there. Go ahead. Leave it. But what people have this habit, both men and women have the habit. Women more than men. Both I've seen it from both sides. That they keep it. So they don't let it go. So when next time some issue come up, they bring that back. And so so they have a whole bag of stuff that they walk around with, And I've had instances, sitting with couples and they go on. I remember one particular incident. A couple, they called me at it wasn't here in another place. Called me at about 10 o'clock in the night, and the place is hot. They can't sleep together in the house. She's saying, "He not sleeping in here tonight." this and that, you know, you need to come over. Could you come over? I said, look, I mean, it's 10
Come
o'clock.
over 10 o'clock at night.
I'm not coming over there, you know. But if you want, you can come with me. So they came. And they asked him, so what happened? Why did that you kind of thing? So they start up, and they started on. He starts saying, and then he told him got into it. And he told him went on, start backward and forward, backward. And he said, you so and so. And she's saying this, and he's saying that they're going on for about, 15, 20 minutes. And I trying to figure out, what's all this stuff? 15, 20 minutes, at least they're going. Then, okay, time out, okay. All the stuff that you're talking about, when all this stuff took place, that all that happened today? This happened 5 years ago. They talk about stuff about 5 or 6 years ago. I said, you all in 5 or 6 years, you can solve those issues. You expect me to solve them now tonight? No, man, please, let's
You want to sleep too? Time to go to sleep too.
Please have mercy on me. Let's talk about what happened today.
Yeah. Thank you.
So they got in and stuff, and they just go and start arguing about what happened on
Yeah.
before again. Stuff that they already resolved before.
Do-
So that's another problem that couples go off on a lot.
How about in the COVID situation, this lockdown situations? I know you're probably not doing a lot of counseling, but doesn't mean you're not getting a lot of phone calls. Anything specific that you're hearing that people are struggling with? Not only couple, families, children, anything that we can learn from or share?
Well, I mean, I still do my counseling on online. Some couples like to do Zoom, and some couples
Yep.
like to do WhatsApp.
No, I didn't know you're doing Zoom. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there are
Okay.
some couples that they can send me a link and do it.
Yeah,
Zoom.
that's
I do
pretty
it.
cool. Now I know I'm going to send you some Zoom links. Okay.
So I do the Zoom with them. So some couples like to do the Zoom. And some do WhatsApp or have some just do conference call.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a lot of there are things that that now that people. But one of the things that happened with COVID is that most time people are out busy running.
Yeah.
Now people are forced to be together at home. So there's a lot of little stuff that pops up.
No.
That they're not accustomed. That
You're not going to be so close all the time.
Yeah,
They become annoying.
Yeah.
They become annoying now.
So sometimes you gotta
Yeah.
so that's
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sheikh. I think thank you for joining us tonight and, addressing some of the questions. It's always good to get a little open session and share with folks at home, and I hope everyone enjoyed the session tonight with Sheikh Dawood. We wish you and your family well during this situation. Allah bless you. Always bless you being a part of our community and being here for us when we need you, and we hope to keep you safe and sound with your family. And for those of you at home, we wouldn't be having sessions the next 2 weeks, given the holidays, and we know people can have some time off. Some of you will travel. We just want to remind you that if you're traveling or if you're going places, try to, follow the rules, try to follow the specifications in your town, your cities, and abide by it while we go through this difficult situation. So thank you all for joining. We wish you all a happy evening and Yawm al-Jumu'ah, and inshallah we'll come back in the second week in January with some new revived topics. So from NIA, from the Sheikh, and from the brothers who are helping to produce our fireside chat, have a good evening, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.